The space station called Celestine Prime floated in the darkness between three different star systems. It was a place where species from across the galaxy came to talk, trade, and make decisions that affected billions of lives. Today it was filled with more visitors than usual. Representatives from over 40 different alien civilizations had gathered in the Grand Hall to witness something historic. Humanity was asking to join the Galactic Alliance. Sergeant Marcus Cole stood perfectly still near the entrance of the hall. He wore the ceremonial armor of Earth's military. The metal plates were polished until they shined like mirrors. Blue lights glowed softly along the edges. He was part of the honor guard, 6 soldiers chosen to represent humanity's discipline and strength. Marcus was 34 years old. His face showed the kind of calm that came from years of experience. His eyes watched everything but reacted to nothing. He had been a soldier for 15 years, and he had learned long ago that the best way to handle difficult situations was to remain steady. The Grand Hall was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Thousands of beings filled the space. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated through the air. A few rolled along the ground on strange wheel-like bodies. The variety of life in the galaxy was beyond anything most humans had imagined before first contact. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the hall, presenting humanity's case to the Council. She spoke about Earth's history, its people, and its hopes for peaceful cooperation with other species. Her words were careful and respectful, but not everyone was listening with respect. Princess Zaira of the Velthani Empire stood among a group of nobles from her world. She was 19 years old, which was considered young even by Velthani standards. Her people lived for nearly 500 years, so she was barely more than a child to them. But she was still royalty. She carried herself with the arrogance that came from a lifetime of privilege. The Velthani were impressive beings. They stood over 8 feet tall, with bodies made of something that looked like living crystal. Their skin shifted colors depending on their emotions. They were known throughout the galaxy as one of the oldest warrior cultures in existence. Zayara was beautiful by any standard. Her crystalline features caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. But her expression was cruel as she looked at the human soldiers. She whispered something to her companions, and they laughed. Then she began walking toward the honor guard. Her nobles followed, eager to see what she would do. Marcus noticed her approach. He kept his eyes forward as he had been trained. Ziara stopped directly in front of him. She was nearly 3 feet taller, and she used that height to look down at him with obvious contempt. "So this is what humanity sends to impress us," she said loudly. Her voice was designed to carry. She wanted everyone nearby to hear. A tiny creature hiding inside a metal shell. Marcus did not respond. He did not move. Zayara began to circle him slowly, like a predator examining something it might eat. "I have heard stories about humans. They say you are fragile, that your bones break easily, that a simple fall can kill you." She laughed, and her nobles laughed with her. "Is this true, little soldier?" Other aliens nearby turned to watch. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed curious about what would happen. "I have also heard," Zayara continued, "that humans must sleep every single day, that you cannot function without rest. My warriors can stay awake for weeks without any decrease in their abilities. How do you expect to stand among us when you spend a third of your lives unconscious?" She leaned closer to Marcus. Her face was inches from his helmet. "And the most pathetic thing I have heard is that humans require constant food and water, that without regular meals, you simply collapse and die, like plants." She shook her head in mock sadness. "How did your species even survive long enough to reach the stars?" The hall had grown quiet. Many beings were watching now. Ambassador Chen had stopped speaking, her face tight with controlled anger. Zayara reached out and tapped her finger against Marcus's chest plate. The sound rang through the silence. "This armor," she announced, "this is the only reason any of you are still alive. Without it, you are nothing. Soft, weak, breakable." She smiled coldly. "My youngest warriors could crush this metal with their bare hands, and the thing inside it would pop like a piece of rotten fruit." Her nobles laughed again, louder this time. Zaora stepped back and spread her arms wide. This is what humanity offers the Galactic Alliance? Fragile creatures in metal boxes? We should deny their requests simply to save them the embarrassment of trying to keep up with real civilizations. She waited for Marcus to react. She wanted him to argue, to defend himself, to give her more ammunition for her mockery. Instead, Marcus did something that no one expected. He reached up and unclasped his helmet. The seals hissed as they released. He lifted the helmet off his head and held it in his hands for a moment, looking at it. Then he set it carefully on the ground. The hall fell completely silent. Marcus removed his gauntlets next, then his arm guards, then his chest plate. Piece by piece, he took off his ceremonial armor and placed it in a neat pile at his feet. When he was finished, he stood in nothing but his gray undersuit. He was lean and unremarkable. No claws, no natural weapons, no crystalline skin or impressive height. It's just a human being. Zaora stared at him in confusion. This was not what she had expected. Marcus looked at her directly for the first time. His expression was calm. Not angry, not ashamed, just calm. "You are right, Princess," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. "I am just a weak human. My bones can break. I need sleep and food and water. Without this armor, I am soft and fragile." He bent down and picked up his helmet. He held it under his arm. "So I will remove myself from your presence before my weakness offends you any further." Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Zare's confident expression flickered. This was not how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to humiliate him, not watch him walk away with dignity. "Where do you think you are going?" she demanded. "I did not give you permission to leave." Marcus paused at the doorway. He looked back over his shoulder. "You made it very clear that I do not belong here, Princess. I am simply accepting your judgment." And then he was gone. The Grand Hall remained silent for a long moment. Zaora stood among the pile of armor, suddenly uncertain. She had won the exchange. She had made the human admit his weakness and leave in defeat. So why did it feel like she had lost something important? She did not know it yet, but this moment would change everything. The man who had just walked away was not simply some random soldier, and the galaxy had been watching far more closely than she realized. Princess Zaora had wanted to make an example of humanity instead. She had started something she could not control. Princess Zaora expected to be celebrated. She had put the humans in their place. She had shown the entire Galactic Council that these newcomers were not worthy of joining their alliance. Her father would be proud. Her people would praise her for defending Velthani honor. She was wrong about all of it, 2 hours after the incident. In the Grand Hall, Zaora was summoned to her father's private chambers aboard their diplomatic vessel. Emperor Kelthus was over 300 years old. His crystalline body had darkened with age, giving him an appearance of carved obsidian. He was known throughout the galaxy as a patient and thoughtful ruler. Today he was furious. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" His voice filled the chamber like thunder. Zaora stood before him, confused by his reaction. "Defended our honor, father. I showed the council that humans are not ready to stand among the great civilizations. They are weak. Everyone knows this. Weak." The emperor stepped closer to his daughter. His eyes burned with cold fire. "You called Marcus Cole weak? As a soldier?" He admitted it himself, removed his armor, and walked away like a coward. Emperor Kelthus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was low and dangerous. "That soldier is Sergeant Marcus Cole. He is not some random guard they sent to stand in a hallway. He is one of the most decorated warriors in human history." Zaora felt the first small crack in her confidence. "I do not understand." "Of course you do not understand. You are 19 years old, and you think you know everything about the galaxy." The Emperor walked to a display screen and activated it. Images began to appear. "Let me educate you about the man you just insulted in front of 40 civilizations." The screen showed a space station. It was old and damaged, surrounded by strange organic shapes that moved like living creatures. "This is Cairo Station," the Emperor said. 12 years ago, a hive incursion broke through the outer defenses of Sector 7. You have heard of the hive, yes? Zayara nodded slowly. Everyone had heard of the Hive. They were a species that consumed everything in their path. Entire civilizations had been destroyed by their endless hunger. Even the Velthani feared them. The Hive attacked Cairo Station without warning. There were over 200,000 civilians on that station, families, children, scientists, merchants. None of them were soldiers. The images shifted to show human military vessels approaching the station. Every other species in the sector fled, the Dralith, the Quarren. Even a Velthani patrol that was nearby chose to retreat rather than engage the Hive. The Emperor's voice was heavy with shame. But the humans stayed. They sent 60 soldiers to hold the station while evacuation ships were prepared. 60 soldiers against a Hive swarm. Do you understand what I am telling you, daughter? They knew they would die. They went anyway. Zayora watched the screen as battle footage played. She saw human soldiers in armor fighting against nightmarish creatures. She saw them fall, one by one, but always more humans stepping forward to take their place. The evacuation took 11 days. 11 days of constant fighting. No sleep, no reinforcements. No hope of survival. The Emperor paused. When Alliance forces finally arrived to help, they found one human still standing. Just one. Surrounded by thousands of dead Hive creatures. The image on the screen changed to show a single figure in damaged armor, barely able to stand, but still holding his weapon. That was Marcus Cole. Zayora felt something cold settle in her stomach. He'd been awake for 11 days. He had been wounded 17 times. He had run out of ammunition on day 4 and had been fighting with whatever he could find ever since. The Emperor turned to face his daughter. He did not survive because he was strong in the way you measure strength. He survived because humans do not know how to quit. Because something inside them refuses to stop fighting, even when logic says they should die. The princess could not speak. And you called him weak. You mocked him in front of the entire galaxy. You told him he did not belong among real warriors. Sayora finally found her voice. I did not know. No, you did not bother to know. You saw a species smaller than you, softer than you, and you assumed you were better. The Emperor shook his head. This is not how I raised you, daughter. This is not what it means to be Velthani. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. The humans are packing their things. They are leaving. What? Zayora stepped forward. They cannot leave. The council has not made a decision yet. Ambassador Chen informed the council that humanity will withdraw their petition. She said they came here seeking friendship, not permission to exist. The Emperor's voice was tired now. She said perhaps the galaxy is not ready for humanity yet. Zara felt a strange sensation she had never experienced before. It took her a moment to recognize it as shame. Father, I can fix this. I can apologize. I can tell them I did not mean what I said. It is too late for simple apologies. The Emperor turned back to face her. But that is not the worst of it. Watch what happens now. He activated another display. This one showed the Grand Hall, where representatives were gathering to discuss the human departure. The first to speak was Ambassador Drevin of the Dralith. His species looked like tall insects with 4 arms and compound eyes. If humanity leaves, the Dralith will leave with them. Marcus Cole saved my homeworld during the border conflicts. We owe him a debt that can never be repaid. Next came Trademaster Quill of the Quarren Merchant Collective. The Quarren will maintain all trade agreements with Earth regardless of alliance politics. Humans are honest dealers and reliable partners. We will not abandon them because of the foolish words of one young princess. One by one, other species spoke up in defense of humanity. The Sentinel Collective, the Assembly of 12, even the mysterious Deep Walkers who rarely spoke at all, expressed their support for the human petition. Zayara watched in growing horror. She had meant to diminish one soldier. Instead, she had accidentally revealed something she had never suspected. Humanity was not some weak newcomer begging for acceptance. They had already earned the respect of dozens of civilizations. They had saved lives and built relationships across the galaxy while the Velthani had been looking down on them. And now, Because of her pride, she had united all of those species against her own people. Do you understand now? The Emperor asked quietly. You did not embarrass humanity today, daughter. You embarrassed us. You showed the galaxy that the Velthani are arrogant fools who judge others based on appearance rather than character. Zeora felt tears forming in her eyes. Velthani did not cry often, but she could not stop them. What do I do, father? How do I fix this? The Emperor looked at her for a long moment. His anger had faded, replaced by something that might have been hope. That is not a question I can answer for you. But I will tell you this. He placed his hand on her shoulder. The measure of a person is not whether they make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The measure is what they do afterward. He walked toward the door, then paused. Sergeant Cole did not walk away because he was weak. Zeora. He walked away because he was strong enough to choose not to fight. He was strong enough to let you win a battle that did not matter. The Emperor left her alone with her thoughts, and for the first time in her life, Princess Zeora of the Velthani Empire began to question everything she had been taught about. Strength and weakness. She had 3 days before the humans left the station forever. 3 days to decide what kind of person she wanted to be. 3 days passed slowly for Princess Zeora. She spent most of that time alone in her quarters, thinking about what she had done. She reviewed every piece of information she could find about humanity. She watched recordings of their history, their wars, their struggles, and their triumphs. She learned about their music, their art, their strange customs. The more she learned, the worse she felt. These people had crawled out of caves only a few thousand years ago. They had no natural weapons, no special abilities, no advantages compared to other species. They should have died out long before they ever reached the stars, but they had not died. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had survived wars that killed millions of their own kind. They had survived disasters that would have ended most civilizations. And somehow, through all of it, they had kept moving forward. On the morning of the 3rd day, Zeora made a decision. She dressed in simple clothes, without any royal symbols or decorations. She did not bring guards or attendants. She walked alone through the corridors of Celestine Prime until she reached the docking section, where the human vessel was connected to the station. The ship was called Perseverance. Zeora thought that was a very human name for a vessel. 2 human guards stood at the airlock entrance. They watched her approach with careful expressions. She expected them to stop her or question her intentions. Instead, one of them simply stepped aside and opened the door. Ambassador Chen said you might come, the guard said. She is waiting for you inside. Zeora entered the ship. The corridors were smaller than she was used to, built for humans instead of larger species. She had to walk carefully to avoid hitting her head on doorways. Ambassador Chen met her in a small reception area. The human woman looked tired but not hostile. Princess Zeora. Chen's voice was neutral. I cannot say I am surprised to see you. I need to speak with Sergeant Cole. Why? Zeora considered how to answer. She could have lied. She could have made up some political excuse. Instead, she chose honesty. Because I was wrong, and I need to understand how wrong I was. Ambassador Chen studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. He is in the observation deck. End of the corridor, turn left. She paused. He knew you would come, by the way. He told me 3 days ago. Zeora did not know what to say to that, so she simply walked in the direction Chen had indicated. The observation deck was a small room with a large window that looked out at the stars. Marcus Cole sat in a simple chair, holding a cup of some dark liquid. He was not wearing armor or uniform, just regular clothes that made him look like any ordinary human. He did not turn around when she entered. You came to mock me again? He asked. No. Zeora stepped into the room and stood near the window. I came to understand. Understand what? You. Your people. Why you did what you did. She paused. Why you walked away. Marcus finally turned to look at her. His eyes showed no anger, no hatred, just a kind of tired patience. Sit down, he said, gesturing to another chair. Zeora sat. It was uncomfortable for her larger body, but she did not complain. That drink you were holding, she said. What is it? Coffee. It is a human thing. Bitter liquid that helps us stay awake and think clearly. He held up the cup. Want to try some? No, thank you. They sat in silence for a moment, looking at the stars together. Why did you walk away? Zeora finally asked. In the Grand Hall, you could have defended yourself. You could have argued with me? You could have told everyone about Cairo's station and made me look foolish. Marcus took a sip of his coffee before answering. What would that have proven? That I could shout louder than a 19-year-old princess? He shook his head. I have spent 10 years fighting princess. I have buried friends. I have held soldiers while they died. I have walked through battlefields that would give you nightmares for the rest of your very long life. He set down his cup and looked directly at her. I did not come here to fight anymore. I came because I believed in something better. I believed that humanity could join the galactic community as partners and friends. I believed that if we showed who we really are, other species would accept us. And then I ruined it, Zeora said quietly. What? You said words. Words can hurt, but they cannot define us unless we let them. Marcus leaned back in his chair. You called me weak. You were not entirely wrong. I am weak compared to you. My bones do break. I do need sleep and food and water. Without my armor, you could probably kill me with one hand. Then why did you remove it? Because I wanted you to see me, not the armor, not the weapon. Me. He paused. I wanted you to understand that humans do not hide inside metal because we are ashamed of what we are. We wear armor because it helps us do our jobs better, but we are not defined by it. Zeora was quiet, processing his words. Tell me about Cairo's station, she said. Not the official story, not the version they put in reports. Tell me what it was really like. Marcus was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was different, heavier. It was 11 days of hell. The hive came in waves. Thousands of them. Millions, maybe. We lost half our squad on the first day. He closed his eyes. I remember thinking it was hopeless, that we were all going to die, and it would not matter. The civilians would die too, and no one would ever know what happened. But you kept fighting. We kept fighting. He opened his eyes. Not because we thought we could win. We knew we could not win. We kept fighting because every hour we held them back was another hour for evacuation ships to load passengers. Every life we saved made our deaths mean something. How did you survive when everyone else died? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. I do not know. I really do not know. By day 8, I was so tired I could barely see. By day 10, I was fighting on instinct alone. My body wanted to quit. My mind wanted to quit, but something inside me just refused to stop. He looked at her with an expression that was almost curious. Humans have a word for it. We call it spite, or stubbornness. It is the part of us that says no when everything else says yes. It is the voice that whispers, keep going, even when there is no logical reason to continue. That is what makes you dangerous, Zeora said slowly. Not your weapons or your armor. That thing inside you that refuses to die? Dangerous? Marcus smiled slightly. I suppose so. But I prefer to think of it as hopeful. Because that same thing that makes us fight impossible battles is also the thing that makes us believe in impossible dreams. Like peace between species who have nothing in common, like friendship across the stars. He picked up his coffee cup again. I came here hoping for friendship, princess. I walked away because fighting with you would have destroyed any chance of that. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to fight. Zeora sat in silence for a long moment. She had come here expecting to find a bitter enemy or a broken victim. Instead, she had found something else entirely. She had found someone who had every reason to hate her, but chose not to. I want to learn, she said finally. I want to understand what it means to be human. This thing inside you that refuses to quit. This stubborn hope you carry. Marcus studied her carefully. Why? Because I am going to live for another 400 years. and I do not want to spend them being the person I was 3 days ago. She met his eyes. I want to be better. I want to be someone who builds bridges instead of burning them.
Hi.
For the first time since she had met him, Marcus Cole genuinely smiled. That, he said, is a very human thing to say. He stood up and extended his hand. Ziara had learned enough about human customs to know what this meant. She took his hand carefully, aware that she could crush it without trying. Welcome to the first day of your education, princess. Please, she said, call me Ziara. All right, Ziara. He shook her hand once and released it. Call me Marcus, and get ready. Because understanding humans is not easy. We do not even understand ourselves most of the time. It was the first real laugh she had experienced in days. Maybe there was hope after all. 3 weeks had passed since the incident in the Grand Hall. During that time, Princess Ziara had become a different person. She spent every day with the human delegation, learning everything she could about their species. She studied their history. She watched their movies and listened to their music. She ate their food, even the strange ones that tasted like nothing she had experienced before. She trained with their soldiers and discovered that despite their small size, they could move in ways that surprised her. But most importantly, she talked. She talked with Ambassador Chen about human politics and diplomacy. She talked with the ship's doctor about human medicine and biology. She talked with the engineers about their technology and the compromises they had made to survive in a universe that was not built for them. And she talked with Marcus. He told her stories about Earth, about mountains that touched the sky and oceans that covered half the planet, about cities filled with millions of people and villages where everyone knew each other by name, about wars they had fought among themselves and the peace they had struggled to build. We are not perfect, Marcus said one evening. We never claimed to be. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history, but we have also done beautiful things. We have created art that makes people cry and music that makes them dance. We have built hospitals to heal the sick and schools to teach the young. But you still fight wars, Ziara pointed out. Yes, we still fight wars. Marcus nodded slowly. Because sometimes fighting is necessary. Sometimes there are things worth dying for. The trick is knowing the difference between the battles that matter and the ones that do not. Ziara thought about that for a long time. 3 weeks after her first visit to the human ship, she made a formal request to address the Galactic Council. The request surprised everyone. Velthani royalty did not usually ask for permission to speak. They simply spoke. But Ziara was trying to be different. The Grand Hall was packed on the day of her address. Word had spread about the princess's strange behavior. Some said she had lost her mind. Others said she had been tricked by the humans somehow. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Emperor Kelthus sat among the Velthani delegation. His expression was unreadable, but Ziara could see the hope hidden in his eyes. He wanted her to succeed. Marcus stood with the human delegation near the back of the hall. Ambassador Chen had convinced them to stay for this moment. He watched Ziara with quiet curiosity. The princess walked to the center of the hall, looked out at the assembled representatives. 40 civilizations. Thousands of individuals. All waiting to hear what she would say, she took a deep breath and began. I stand before you today to admit that I was wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was not what anyone had expected. 3 weeks ago, in this very hall, I mocked a human soldier. I called him weak. I said that his species did not deserve to stand among the great civilizations of the galaxy. Ziara paused. I believed I was speaking the truth. I believed that strength meant physical power, that weakness meant needing help, and that any species that could not match the Velthani was somehow lesser. She activated a holographic display that appeared in the air before her. Have spent the last 3 weeks learning how wrong I was. Data began to scroll. Across the display, numbers and charts and comparisons. Humans require 8 hours of sleep to function at their best. This is true. But their soldiers routinely operate on 2 hours of sleep or less for days at a time. They become slower and less sharp, but they keep fighting anyway. They keep going when their bodies are screaming at them to stop. The display changed to show biological information. Humans need constant food and water. This is also true, but they have crossed deserts that would kill my people in hours. They have survived in frozen wastelands where there was nothing to eat for weeks. Their bodies break down, but their minds find ways to keep them alive. More data appeared. Battle statistics, survival rates, endurance records. Human bones break more easily than Velthani crystal, but they heal themselves. They set the broken bone, wait for it to mend, and return to action. I have seen records of human soldiers who broke the same arm 3 times and kept fighting with that arm each time. Turned to look directly at the human delegation. Sergeant. Marcus Cole stood alone against a hive swarm for 11 days. He did not do this because he was the strongest or fastest being in the galaxy. He did it because something inside him refused to give up. She looked back at the crowd. Humans call this thing by many names. Spite, stubbornness, will, hope. She paused. I call it the most terrifying thing I have ever encountered. The hall was completely silent now. When I removed Marcus Cole's armor with my words, I thought I was exposing his weakness. Instead, I exposed my own ignorance, because the armor was never what made him strong. The metal and circuits were just tools. The strength was always inside him, inside all of them. Zaira stepped down from the speaking platform and walked across the hall. The crowd parted before her. She stopped directly in front of Marcus Cole. I formally apologize for my words and actions, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about your people. And I was wrong about what strength really means. Then she did something that no Velthani royal had done in 2 centuries. She bowed. Not a small nod of acknowledgement. A full bow, bending at the waist, until her head was lower than Marcus's. In Velthani culture, this was the deepest sign of respect one person could show another. The silence in the hall became absolute. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and gently touched her shoulder. Stand up, Zayara, he said quietly. You do not need to bow to me. She straightened and met his eyes. There were tears on her crystalline face, something Velthani almost never showed in public. I formally request that humanity's petition be granted full membership in the Galactic Alliance, she announced. And I offer my house's complete endorsement of this request. The silence lasted for another heartbeat. Then, Ambassador Drevin of the Drolith rose to his feet. The Drolith seconded this request. Trademaster Quill stood next. The Quarren Merchant Collective adds our support. One by one, other delegations rose. The Sentinel Collective. The Assembly of 12. The Deep Walkers. Species that had been neutral or uncertain now added their voices to the growing chorus. Emperor Kelthus watched his daughter with tears of his own. She had done something he had never managed to do in 300 years of ruling. She had shown the galaxy that the Velthani were capable of change. Within an hour, the vote was held. Humanity was accepted into the Galactic Alliance by the largest margin in recorded history. Not a single delegation voted against them. Afterward, Marcus found Zayara standing alone on one of the observation platforms. She was looking out at the stars again. It was a brave thing you did, he said. It was the right thing. She turned to face him. You knew this would happen, did you not? When you walked away 3 weeks ago, you knew I would eventually come looking for answers. Marcus smiled slightly. I hoped you would. I was not certain. You took a risk. If I had not come, your people would have left with nothing. We would have survived. We always survive. He stood beside her at the window. But I wanted more than survival for us. I wanted friendship, partnership, a real place in the galaxy. And you got it, we got it together. Marcus looked at her. That speech you gave, that bow, those were not small things. You risked your reputation and your standing with your own people. Some of them will never forgive me, Zayar admitted. There are Velthani who believe I have shamed our entire civilization. Do you regret it? She thought about the question carefully before answering. No, because I meant every word. And because for the first time in my life, I feel like I did something that truly mattered. She paused. Something worth remembering. Marcus nodded slowly. You know, he said, there is a human saying. It goes like this. The strongest trees grow in the strongest winds. Hardship does not break us. It shapes us. Zayara considered this. Is that why humans are the way they are? Because your world was hard? Maybe. Or maybe we are just too stubborn to know when we should give up. He laughed softly. Either way, it got us here. Standing among the stars with a Velthani princess who finally understands us. I do not think I understand you yet, Zayara said. But I want to keep learning. Then keep learning. You have 400 years. Marcus turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Zayara. Welcome to the Alliance, she smiled, watching him walk away. For the first time in weeks, she felt like the future held something worth hoping for. 1 year had passed since the day Princess Zayara bowed to a human soldier in front of the entire Galactic Council. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one had predicted. Humanity had not only joined the Alliance, they had become one of its most valuable members. Other species quickly discovered that humans were surprisingly good at things that had nothing to do with fighting. They were excellent at compromise. Humans had spent thousands of years arguing with each other about everything from religion to politics to which foods tasted best. They had learned how to find common ground between groups that seemed to have nothing in common. When two alien civilizations had a dispute they could not resolve, they started asking for human mediators. They were creative problem solvers. Humans looked at problems differently than other species. They asked strange questions like, what if we tried the opposite? Or has anyone actually tested whether this is true? They found solutions that had been hiding in plain sight for centuries, and they were stubborn in the best possible way. When other species gave up on difficult projects or abandoned failing negotiations, humans kept trying. They refused to accept that something was impossible just because it had never been done before. Within a year, human diplomats were working on every major space station in the galaxy. Human engineers were helping to design new ships that borrowed ideas from a dozen different civilizations. Human doctors were sharing medical knowledge that saved lives. Across hundreds of worlds, but perhaps the biggest change happened on a personal level, Princess. Zayara had requested and received a new position. She was no longer just a Velthani royal waiting to inherit power someday. She had become the official cultural liaison between the Velthani, Empire, and Earth. This meant she spent most of her time on Earth. Itself, the humans had welcomed her with a mixture of curiosity and warmth. She was the first Velthani to live among them for an extended period. At first, people stared at her wherever she went. She was over 8 feet tall with skin that looked like living crystal. She did not exactly blend in, but humans, she discovered, got used to unusual things very quickly. Within a few months, people in her neighborhood simply waved and said hello when they saw her. The children asked her questions about her homeworld. The adults invited her to dinners and parties. She learned to eat human food, though some of it still confused her. She discovered that pizza was perhaps the greatest invention in human history. She developed a deep appreciation for coffee. The bitter drink that Marcus had offered her on that first day, she trained with human soldiers and was humbled by their endurance. They could not match her strength or speed, but they could keep going long after she had to rest. She learned that humans measured fitness not by how fast someone could run, but by how long they could keep running. She studied human history and was amazed by how recently they had achieved space travel. Other species had taken millions of years to reach the stars. Humans had done it in less than a century after inventing powered flight. They did not know the meaning of impossible, but most importantly, she learned to lead differently. When she visited Velthani colonies, she no longer tried to impress people with shows of strength. She listened to their concerns. She asked questions instead of giving orders. She admitted when she did not know something and sought advice from those who knew more. Some traditional Velthani were horrified by this. They called her weak and soft. They said she had been corrupted by human thinking, but others saw something different. They saw a leader who actually cared about the people she led. They saw someone who was strong enough to be humble. They started calling her Zayata the Wise, a title usually reserved for ancient rulers who had proven themselves over centuries. On the one-year anniversary of what people now called the Armor incident, a ceremony was held on Celestine. Prime representatives from across the galaxy gathered to celebrate the success of humanity's integration into the Alliance ambassador. Chen presented Sergeant Marcus Cole with the Alliance's highest honor. It was a medal made from metals gathered from 40 different worlds, symbolizing the unity of the galactic community, but the medal was not given for his legendary battle record. This award, Chen announced, is presented for demonstrating the truest form of strength, the wisdom to choose peace when war would have been easier, the courage to walk away when fighting would have felt satisfying, the faith to believe that understanding was possible even when insults were fresh. Marcus accepted the medal with quiet dignity. He did not give a long speech. He simply thanked his fellow humans, thanked the Alliance, and then turned to look at Zayora in the crowd. "And thank you," he said directly to her, "for being willing to learn." After the ceremony, they found each other on the same observation platform where they had talked so many times before. "1 year," Zayara said. "It feels longer. My time moves differently when everything is changing." Marcus leaned against the railing and looked out at the stars. "The galaxy looks different now, does it not?" "It does." She stood beside him, no longer awkward about sharing space with someone so much smaller than her. Human ships flying alongside Velthani cruisers. Human music playing in alien restaurants. Human ideas spreading everywhere. Does that bother you? The idea of humans everywhere? Zayora laughed. "A year ago it would have. Now, I think the galaxy needed you. We were all stuck in our old ways, doing things the same way we had done them for millions of years. You came in and started asking why. We are good at asking why." "You're annoying at asking why." She smiled, but in a good way. They were quiet for a moment, watching ships move through the darkness outside. "I have been thinking," Zayora said eventually, "about the day you removed your armor. What about it? I used to believe you did it because you were giving up, because you could not handle my insults and wanted to escape." She turned to face him. "But now I understand. You were not giving up. You were showing me something." "What was I showing you?" "That you did not need the armor. That underneath all the metal and technology, there was still something dangerous. Something that had survived for 11 days against the Hive." She paused. "You removed your armor to show me that you were not hiding behind it. You were protecting me from what was inside." Marcus smiled, but it was a complicated expression. "That is one way to look at it, is it not true?" "Partly." He was quiet for a moment. "But mostly I just did not want to fight you. I was tired, Zayara. Tired of battles. Tired of proving myself. I came here hoping to find something other than conflict." He looked at her. "And I did find it. Eventually, friendship. Friendship, partnership, hope." He shrugged. "All the things humans are too stubborn to stop believing in." Zayara reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. She was always careful when touching humans. She could crush him without meaning to. "Thank you," she said, "for walking away that day, for giving me the chance to become someone better. Thank yourself for taking that chance. I just left the door open. You were the one who walked through it." They stood together in comfortable silence. Two beings from different worlds who had found understanding in the most unlikely way around them. The galaxy continued to change. Humans worked alongside species that had once dismissed them. Velthani culture was slowly becoming more open and curious. New alliances were forming. Old prejudices were fading, all because one soldier had been strong enough to walk away, and one princess had been brave enough to follow. Years later, when historians wrote about this era, they would call it the beginning of the Great Understanding. The moment when the galaxy started to see past the obvious differences between species and began appreciating what they could learn from each other. They would write about the legendary Battle of Kairos Station and the soldier who refused to die, They would write about the princess who humbled herself before the entire galaxy and asked to learn. But mostly, they would write about what happened afterward. The friendships that formed, the barriers that fell, the future that everyone built together, because in the end, the greatest victory was not won through strength or weapons or power. It was won through understanding. And it all started with a simple act of walking away in the Grand Council Hall. Where so much history had been made, a new inscription was added to the wall. It was a human saying that Zayara had suggested. Translated into every language known to the Alliance, in the end, the greatest warriors are not those who conquer others, but those who conquer themselves. Humans had been saying things like this for thousands of years. The rest of the galaxy was finally starting to understand what they meant.